Just a few years ago, working with AI meant having simple conversations with a chatbot. And then we got the ability to upload files, connect to external data, do data analysis with a coding tool. And today, AI agents are really handling complex workflows, solving real world problems, and really driving impact that's reshaping how business analysis work. So today we have Angela Wick, founder of BA Cube, and also a good friend of mine, thankfully, plus an expert in business analysis and agile product ownership. Angela, we're going all through this weird shared experience. I feel like we're all watching the same show or doing the same thing, the entire world all at once. And now we have these new category of tools called agents. So can you talk a little bit about how this agentic AI is different than what we've seen before?
Yeah, Ray, it's funny because we all see and we all are on a different span of what AI is to us, right? I see people saying they use it as a query or search tool, which might be kind of the initial stages someone goes through, and then start having conversations, learning how to prompt. And then folks learn how to build a chain of prompts and then connect to that other data you were just talking about. Maybe even embed prompts or automations into existing tools, or use tools they used before, but click on that little AI button and see what it does with inside tools, right? But agents really kick it up, and we get into the idea of a tool that can act, reason, make decisions, and take more complex, lengthy instructions to perform a task and use tools. So we can think of agents like as parts of individual productivity, but in my work, we think a lot about them in terms of for business processes and reimagining business processes, redefining how work gets done and human AI collaboration within organizations.
I almost feel that a lot of people are still maybe a few steps behind working with just a chatbot. I meet a lot of people that
Yeah.
are just trying to learn what can I do with just regular AI. Forget about, they don't even know about, say, like the code interpreter that can help you build some dashboards or anything like that. They don't know about the connectors that are now available. So all these tools are getting the ability to connect to your Drive or connect to your Azure or connect to anything else. And that gives you kind of a whole new level of abilities. And now we have these agents that you can kind of give them a task and they can actually complete something potentially that a human would normally be assigned. So what do you think about this concept of replacing a lot of business functionalities? Is this AI going to fully replace certain aspects of business analysis, or is it just something that's going to continue to be complementary?
That's a really good question. I think some of that's unknown. And with business analysis, I see it potentially working with business analysts, not really replacing, but working with them and changing how they work. But even more, I
Mhm.
see business analysts working with business and technology teams to implement agents in organizations for business processes.
Yeah,
So
maybe, yeah, can you maybe give me some examples of sort of a practical, sort
sure,
of use
sure.
for this? Yeah.
Individually, for example, my own productivity. I was tinkering the other day, building an agent to plan my week with me.
Mhm.
And so I gave this agent access to my email, to my calendar, and I asked it to prepare a list of meetings and the prep work I needed to do for each meeting, and then send me an email every Friday at 3 o'clock for the next week, so that I had a couple hours at the end of my Friday to prepare for my week. Now, some of my meetings take a lot more than a couple of hours to prepare for, and I'm on top of that. But
Mhm, mhm.
what a great reminder as I'm closing out my week to be like, oh my gosh, am I ready for the week? Do I need to plan other things into my week, etc.?
Mm,
But that's me. That's individual productivity, right? And we could
mhm.
apply that in many different ways to different roles and stuff. But business process wise, think about like an agent engaging in a conversation with a customer. Well, wait, we see chatbots already. Yeah,
Mm.
but what if that chatbot could actually take action and do things with tools like email, search, make a decision, determine a category, escalate something, decide when to escalate it to a human? That's where we're getting into the realm of agents, where we're not just chatting with them, we're actually having them reason, plan, and act
Mhm.
to use tools to make decisions. And it's a little scary. So, like, when I think about it, Ray, I think we have to be equally excited about it as we are cautious. If we don't have that balance, it's a little freaky.
So true. And I think that we've seen advances really change the way things work. And I think that if you learn to embrace these things, especially early, and train, to know how to leverage them, I think you're going to be ahead. And I'm very much a positive person. I think that we're just going to end up doing bigger things than we have been doing so far. And we're going to relegate some of these activities that honestly, we probably didn't really enjoy doing that much, because these agents are so good. So I know I come from like the programming world, and I'm going to give you sort of an example of a tool that I really love called Codex. And
Okay.
a lot of this stuff happens in programming first, but I think you can probably see how it could apply to other things. And so
Mhm.
this tool basically, it's from OpenAI, and it lets you assign an agent programming tasks to review code, identify code that needs to be updated automatically, like build documentation when something changes. So instead of, for example, you having to, figure out, I made a change in my program, and I need to talk about or think about what I need to do to document this, right? This agent will monitor for changes, and then it will automatically say, hey, looks like you updated this function. I noticed that in your documentation, you're using it here, here, here. It looks like it needs to be updated in 3 places. Why don't I put together like a draft documentation for you? And it'll do it. And then you can accept the changes, review them, accept them. So you could see that there's
Ray,
a
hold
lot of
on.
tasks here that they're done. So I could see something like this happening in other places where, for me, like the big, huge thing for me was one of the things that you can ask the tool to do is to give you some ideas for possible improvements. So I love to run this query on the project because it'll
Yeah,
go
and
through and look through. Sorry, go ahead.
I want to ask you something.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm curious about, and you and I did not do this before the
No, we
call.
didn't
This is
play.
like
Yeah.
live, right?
Yes.
Okay. So business analysts typically are responsible for updating documentation when code changes are
Mm,
made.
mhm.
Now, they don't update the technical documentation. It's more well, there's all different types of documentation, right?
Right.
Everything from user support, customer support, requirements documentation, functional documentation, design documentation, specs.
Mhm.
So I'm very curious what documentation gets updated or how it knows which and what audience and what level of detail,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
good points. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this is why us talking to each other is really great because I come from more of the programming side. But one of the things that I was really impressed with this tool about was I gave it a project that I thought was done. There's nothing wrong with this thing. I wonder what it could possibly find. And it actually found a lot of things. For example, you can see the very first thing is documentation. So the first thing it's telling me is, hey, the README file is not aligning with your directories. You made a change and you forgot to update the structure of how your folders are set up. And
Oh,
here's what it says, and here's what it should be. So do you want me to fix this? Right. So this is one of the improvements. Right. And then it'll go through it and it found all these things that I didn't even know were wrong with the project, typos that I didn't know were there. It found, like here's a discrepancy in the licenses. So that's another thing you do. You
mm,
mentioned one license in one part of the documentation, and it looks like then you upgraded it somewhere else, and you did change it in 3 different places, but you forgot a 4th that you hadn't been keeping track of. So just that ability to sit there and monitor and go, oh, I noticed there's been some changes to certain documents. I'm going to just go through and analyze everything again and highlight potential places where things need to be updated. And then I can go ahead and take care of them and show you a draft to approve my, the AI's
so,
modifications.
okay. So let's back up then for the audience because my mind's naturally going there too.
Yeah.
In order for this agent to work, it has to have access to your code base, access to your documentation, and you have to give it instructions, or whoever built it gave it instructions on when to trigger action, what it should look at, what it
Mhm.
should look for, and what it should respond to you with. without explicit deterministic instructions that you would typically code, right? It's just
Yeah, it's
using
just
its own
natural language.
intelligence.
It's almost like you're having a chat. My entire prompt was, "Hey, can you find anything that I could fix for this document?" And then it triggered a number of potential fixes again. And the impressive things is I thought this thing was fine, and it found like 10 different things that I could improve. And I looked through the list, and I'm like, "Wow, these are all great." And then the once it finds something to do, then all you have to do is hit a button that activates it to start working through the process of taking care of that task. And then it shows you something like this in programming. Hold on, we call this a diff. So it goes through and it goes, in this piece of code, here's what I need to change to fix the problem that is in this code. And then in here, I could just hit a button called create a pull request. And that pull request will be a request to make the modification permanent, which again then goes to GitHub, and then you can sort of approve it basically. So there is a process. There's still human input. You can decide whether or not you want to accept the changes. You can review all the modifications. But yeah, this is what agents I think are going to be doing really well. Again, I didn't expect any of this to be something that would I thought surely I know maybe there's like one problem, but I hadn't thought of the fact that I had updated the license here and that it needed to go update the other license. So this basically right now you give it access to what we call a repository. So sort of a computer program. The computer program has licensing, it has the documentation, it has all these different pieces. But on a big company, you could just give it access to say continuously monitor everything, so that when somebody does a change over here, it's going to look over here and go, hey, by the way, did you know that you probably need to update this other document that you weren't thinking about? So I got really excited like when I saw this doing that work, and that it was so good at doing it. So
Yeah.
I can imagine that's what the future will hopefully be like for everyone. So
My brain's like going
yeah,
in circles. Like it's not
this is what we're
shocking to
doing.
me. It's not
Say
shocking to me that this could happen. What my brain goes into is, okay, if we peel this down into other types of documentation, like functional documentation, business process documentation, standard operating procedure documentation, help and training manuals for these softwares and for users, stuff like that. But then, okay, you get this list of things in the diff, because we get diffs too for other types of documentation, right?
Mhm.
Whose role is it going to be to go through and decide which updates to make? Or are people just going to go, yeah, just make them? And like, right. And then my brain goes towards that whole, like, what if you get like AI on AI on
Yeah, yeah.
AI and like,
Yeah, like
how?
the classic, somebody is having an AI write some presentation, and then somebody writes a program to read the presentation and just get the bullet
Yeah.
points, right? And then nobody ever talks to each other. Yeah, obviously there's potential pitfalls. I think we have to kind of create workflows around it. I mean, for me, I'm able to do a lot more than I was able to for these single projects that are personal projects, as you mentioned, because I would miss all these things that I didn't even know were a problem.
Yeah.
So on a big company, I imagine that you could just have an agent that just constantly say monitors things for a team, and then just sort of emails the team member that's the stakeholder for that business activity, and then it just tells them, hey, here's a couple of things that you may need to fix.
Yeah.
Here's some proposed fixes, just review them. And their job would be just really more reviewing and then modifying. Obviously, the automated text is pretty good, but sometimes it isn't perfect or right, or it is missing something. But just the fact that it's telling you that it's finding it, automatically telling you about it, and giving you an opportunity to fix it. I think it'll kind of be the same people, but they'll just be able to handle like a lot more volume and be a lot, I don't know, catch a lot more things that we were never getting. Also, some of these agents I've seen, some of the agents can do programming. So creating like a dashboard that perhaps automatically updates based on some sort of change in the company's content. Once you give them access to like an entire, not code base, but an entire sort of business data, then it would be able to just continuously automate. I think that's one of the moves that we're seeing in programming. We have this thing called CI/CD, which is continuous integration
Mhm.
of a task. So when somebody updates a project, then you need to run tests and you need to update that again. Same stuff. So I think something that runs continually would be the next step. This just runs as I request a task to be done. But if there
Yeah.
can be something monitoring everything that's going on, then I think that's kind of where we're heading to next.
That's where I see kind of the magic of this elevating into an enterprise level and business analysis coming in is
Mhm.
that monitoring. If you're talking about doing agents like this through an enterprise process, then the monitoring, someone has to decide, well, what are we monitoring? What's important to
Mhm.
measure? Who needs to see what? When do they need to see it? And then
Right.
what actions do they need to take? So
Mhm.
there's a whole process around the monitoring. There's a whole group of users and actions they need to take. And that's a lot of business analysis to say, hey, wait, what challenge are we anticipating? How are we going to handle it? How do we define it? How do we measure it? What data needs to be on that dashboard?
Mhm.
Who needs to see it? Who should and shouldn't see it? And what actions do they need to take? Like defining those workflows in this new world of agents is super interesting to me.
Mhm.
The
What about
human workflows of it
what
all to make it effective and efficient, right?
Absolutely. And I think that it's a really exciting time because I think it's really going to make our jobs better. I
Mhm.
know that um, I almost want to say that when I started using these tools, I hadn't felt programming being a fun thing to do for a while. It's always like work. Oh, I got to do this. Oh, I got to now do this. And there's always like a lot of things that I didn't want to do. Like I loved certain parts of programming, but not
Yeah.
others, like the documentation. Like for example, there's like there's like the release notes that you have to do, and there's the setting up the different versions of the application and all that stuff. And I'm like, man, I just want to program the thing. I don't really need to do all. But now it makes it so that I can focus on the things that I like, which is kind of like thinking about solving the problems, not the typing of how I do the actual
Yeah.
work. But with that comes the fact that we need to measure the value delivered by these AI workflows. So what do you think businesses are going to end up doing to sort of measure the return on investment of these tools? Because they're kind of pricey.
Well, that itself is business analysis, answering that question
Hmm.
of right. So business analysis is going to have to help identify that ROI, identify the value, identify current state, future state, and then what's the path to get from current state to future state, including experiments, prototypes, running the baseline data, tracking and measuring the data as you keep making continuous improvements all along. So with agents, we're going to be like doing experimenting and prototyping. We're going to run baseline processes before that, do the experiments and prototypes, track the data. Is it getting better? But analyzing what data to track, what goals, what measurements, what baselines, and then implementing those small improvements and continuously analyzing and keeping track of all that. That's where the true power of business analysis comes in, along with the details of the agent, like the instructions, the error fallout, the processing, the human in the loop flows, and
Right.
monitoring and dashboards and defining those details as well. And that's all this huge skill set and function we call
Hmm.
business analysis to really think through all that. Now, if I'm just building a productivity agent, I can kind of keep it all straight up here and figure it out and experiment. And there's not a lot of risk if it goes wrong.
Hmm.
But when we start putting this into customer facing regulatory and compliance driven processes, is when the analysis becomes super critical.
Hmm. Yeah, I think you talked about this a little bit, but can you talk about maybe some of the pitfalls that people should avoid when adopting these really slick looking, it's going to save me so much, and also like maybe the fact that people always think they can do something, but then when they try doing it, it's not as easy, or the tools aren't just there yet. Some of these tools they do pretty cool things, but you know
Yeah.
you can get hallucinations, you can get issues. So how should teams sort of what kind of things should people avoid when working with these tools and really even determining which tools to use?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing I see that we need to be aware of if we're in that situation is if you're in a situation where you expect to do all the requirements up front, and then have one build phase and go, right? You mentioned continuous deployment development stuff, right? Agents it has to be a continuous development process. It has to have experiments. We have to do small things at a time and keep checking our data all the way along and seeing the differences that we're making and putting small pieces in at a time. It's if we try to do too much at one time, right? We want to accumulate value and measurable value versus accumulate and snowball risk all along, and then some big bang implementation where it's like, oh no, the complexity is just too big to plan too much at one time. But yet we need a vision and a path that we're going down, right, in order to make decisions on the small things along the way. So that would be the biggest thing. I think the other one is just, if fear is overriding everything so much that people won't even experiment or try, because experimenting doesn't mean you're necessarily launching it to production, right? Experimenting is how we learn. It's how organizations learn. And if we're not experimenting, we're not learning, then are we ever going to get there?
And I read this article about how a lot of companies internally, they don't have the best tools. They're working with like models from like a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. And so when you see these new things happening, they have no context to or the ability to be able to use some of these new things. And I think that could be maybe a pitfall. Like, how do you get some of these capabilities that are going to keep you competitive, with technology that's like a year and a half old, which is, like a lifetime for these tools?
Yeah, magic question, right? How do we do that? I mean, I don't know the answer to that other than I love that we're doing stuff like this to help people question what they have, right?
And you know what I love? I love talking to you because it feels like we run into the same things just from completely different perspectives, like as a developer and a business analyst. So I'm going to ask you a question that somebody asked me, which I thought was kind of funny.
Okay.
But I want to know how you answer it because I thought this was a little bit out there. How do you see agents evolving over the next 3 to 5 years in business analysis? And the funny part was the 3 to 5 years, because I think ChatGPT's only been out for like a couple of years. So, I'm imagining flying cars, Back to the Future. So what are your thoughts about how things are going to be in like 5 years? Give me your 5-year plan here.
So like what business models will be like and business analysts working with them would be one answer to that. Another answer would be like the life of a business analyst, right? And actually, I posted about it this morning on LinkedIn. A little over a year ago, Tim Coventry and I released a book called Future Proof, and it's all about the business analysis mindset for the future. And each chapter starts out with a vignette of the future of business analysis with AI. And so it's just fun, but there's a lot of unknowns still. We still have to pave the way. But definitely AI is going to be a part of it. It's definitely going to be a human AI collaboration, right? So we could think of anything like teams. So, okay, you come at it from a software perspective. If you're on a software team, you might do working sessions and workshops together to do requirements, design, prototype, rapid iterations, right? Testing together in the room. So imagine AI as your teammate in the room. And so instead of a meeting and going away and a business analyst or a developer coming back with things like designs and ideas and requirements documents, AI is right in the room creating that with you, for you, right in the moment. So already we're seeing teams get from idea to prototype in 1 hour, half-hour meeting.
Wow.
Whereas that used to take weeks, months, for some organizations, years, right? We'd have to have tons of meetings to ideate and prioritize and analyze. And I'm not saying
even research used to be like something that would take so long, and now it's just a button.
Well, sort of.
We're
not saying this stuff doesn't happen anymore. What we're saying is it becomes a continuous development thing. So it's not that we don't do user research or we don't do analysis, we don't do prioritization. Of course we do. but we're doing it instead of a sequential pattern over weeks and months. We're doing it in real time, continuously, all the time, on demand as we need it. So I can go into a room with business leaders, business users, technical teams, vendors, an AI agent, and myself as a BA or project manager. I can put a project idea together, talk to AI who can create a prototype within 5 minutes. We can play with the prototype, give feedback, iterate a little bit. And at the end of the meeting, we're asking, well, what are the risks, social risks, feasibility risks, financial risks, cultural risks? What are our action items for that? So we can come up with human actions that used to take us much longer to get to. And this is business leadership stuff, right? And then we can iterate and build so much faster. Now, it doesn't mean we're going to deploy right away, but a lot of the things that used to be critical path, like development, are not anymore. So that's the biggest thing, is I say analysis and leadership become critical path, not development.
Yeah, I think that, again, thinking at our two different worlds, that I see just us being able to do a lot more. For us, a big thing is A/B testing. Like, how would this work if you modify it a little bit? Well, instead of just running, say, one A/B test, you can run 1,000. And I think the agents and the robots, or whatever we end up getting, are going to be able to potentially act as an audience. Like, just, okay, let's run this by this massive audience that represents our target real audience, and see how it performs, and run 1,000 tests, and tweak, and maybe it'll give us some feedback about how to tweak the release of what we're doing. And really, just, I don't know, that's the only thing that I can think of. And then in 5 years, we'll have like neural networks, and I don't know how it's going to be, flying cars, neural networks. But I think we could just do a lot more. And I'm excited because we're just going to be able to solve bigger problems and be a lot more, I don't know, nimble and precise about what we do.
As long as we have the monitoring and guardrails set up.
Yes. So yeah, that's great. That's perfect for my next question. I don't know if you've seen this really old movie that I love called Colossus, the Forbin Project, I think it's called. So if you know Elon Musk, his cluster of computers is called Colossus. And I think it came from this movie. It's like a 1970s movie. And it's exactly what you think it is. The computer is given control of the entire like US defense system. It finds another computer in the Soviet Union that is doing the same thing. They get together and they pretty much enslave the entire humanity by the end. Not that I want to give up the end.
What year was this from?
This is from 1970. Like, we're talking, like the computer couldn't talk. It's like typing everything. Like, you can hear the machines go. You have like tape drives, those circle tape drives from like eons ago. But the concept that the computer, as soon as you give it sort of the autonomous control, it decides that it needs to just run everything. And so, I mean, the movie is fantastic. Everybody should go watch that movie. It's available on like the Internet Archive. So what, in your mind, besides taking over the world, what are some of the biggest risks and benefits that you see from letting these AI systems starting to make decisions autonomously? Because I think that's kind of where it might be going next.
Yeah. So first, I just want to, lay it out there that folks that are super afraid of this, I want more people to be focused on good than bad. So jump in and lean in, right?
Good.
There's definitely negative things that could happen and will happen. But I also want to throw out there to, the business analysis audience out here. Business analysis is the skill set that's going to create good. Let's create good with it. And so I really, really see a strong skill set needed to analyze processes, what could go wrong, and build the guardrail systems and processes and data needed to monitor and catch this bad stuff before it happens. And that's, I think organizations are like, wow, how are we going to do that, right? And who knows if it'll be called a business analyst or not in the future, or if that'll branch out into a ton of different roles, or I don't know if it'll all be connected. But, right, we have to do the deep thinking on what could go wrong. How are we going to make it transparent? How are we going to monitor? What are we going to monitor for? And what are we going to measure? And when are we going to put humans in the loop? And it's constant. That's not define it once, let it run, and see you later, right? It's
Correct.
it's
Right.
fundamentally changing how businesses operate and how we model business processes and operate as a business. Now,
Mhm.
is that shift going to happen overnight? No. In fact, could it happen fast? Yes. But yet humanity and our business cultures are probably going to slow it down. The technology is going to be ready, or is already ready, way faster than we are as humans, I think.
Yeah,
I
I
think
think you.
businesses are going to like headwind that, right?
Mhm.
And slow that down. So the companies that can figure out how to analyze this and get comfortable with the monitoring and governance of it faster are going to excel, is what I think is going to happen.
Yeah, completely. And I think that we're gonna get more comfortable letting the machines do some things. Obviously, I do think there still needs to be people in the loop that sort of control. Um, this is what the premise of the movie is, that you can't just give them all the control, or they'll start doing something goofy
Of
that
course.
is irreversible. So I think that we need to keep the control. You know, that movie was amazing because the computer started doing what the current AIs will do unless you control them. They started making their own language and talking to each other, and nobody can understand what they were saying, right? And that actually has happened. So I think the fact that we are preventing them, there's systems already in place that prevent the different AIs from developing their own language and not being able to monitor things. Maybe that will change in some future. But I'm always, I don't know, excited that all our attempts at determining what the future was going to be like have always turned out to be not as scary as we thought they were going to be. We're freaked out by like Y2K for a while. Like if you watch any of the other 70s movies, they're always like, the world is already, it's all about the, what do you call it? The people in the desert, because the world was already gone nuts. And we didn't get any of that. So I'm always encouraged that we're going to be okay. We're going to figure it out. And it's actually going to be great. Who knows? We're going to be able to find, sort of cures for diseases that are plaguing us now that we've never been able to even touch. And the computers can do a lot of good education,
Yeah.
balancing out like the sort of imbalances of wealth in the world, I think could be a problem. I mean, I come from some countries that were considered third world, and we didn't have access to like everything that's here in America. So I think that there could be a lot of great things, and I think it's up to us as humans to sort of determine what that is. So I'm very positive about it.
I'm positive about it. Kind of like visions of, boy, lots of visions in my head with this, but I'm thinking a lot about social sciences, things
Mhm,
like anthropology and sociology, and how those disciplines will be able to contribute to those types of dynamics you're talking about.
mhm.
And like the visions of like, if you put a bunch of 2-year-olds on an island alone, how do they develop a language, develop a society, develop, right? Who knows what would happen, right? And then, I mean, that could happen within an hour if you leave a group of 2-year-olds alone. But then I think about guardrails and monitoring. If you were to do this experiment and set up monitoring and guardrails, what would it be? What would it look like? So, kind of a weird way of thinking about it, but like if you were
Yeah.
to hand over an entire business process to a group of totally unqualified people to do it, what guardrails, what instructions would you give him? Where would you monitor? If you could not, talk to them, you had to give them instructions and set up guardrails and monitoring, what would that look like? Like, okay, you and I are both LinkedIn learning instructors. There's this little instructor part of me in my instructor curriculum design hat that wants to say, how would we build a simulation to teach this in a course?
Mm,
Like, what if we gave a group of students a problem to solve, but then we couldn't, go and interact. We had to like set up monitoring systems and to see how they're doing, and transparency systems and cutoff points, and right, like a
So
lot of
I know
tools.
that a lot of these tools have all these crazy benchmarks where they test them to see like can they solve like PhD level math problems, and can they beat like the coders in coding tests. One of my favorite benchmarks, and I've mentioned that before on the show, is this one called vending bench, where they let a computer run a vending machine, and it has to sort of manage all the processes, order things, just run basically autonomously a vending machine. And
Mhm.
some models do really well. Like this model from Grok made almost $5,000. And some of
Ah!
them don't. Some of them lose money. So I think this is kind of a fun way of having, running some safe kind of autonomous process tests with computers that I think I would love to see more of. Like what are the computers going to do? And perhaps there's kind of, and this is all virtual. So it's not, so they actually I think Claude actually was literally giving a real machine, and it lost a bunch of money. But this is a virtual evaluation of what would happen if you give the machines like a vending machine. So it doesn't run in real life as opposed to the Claude one. But I think that we could
So
see
what you're
some.
showing is you're showing an A/B test against how many different models. You're showing a monitoring dashboard to monitor the performance of it.
Mhm.
So, I mean, right? You,
Yeah.
you probably think, hey, this is a cool example. And I'm also looking at it like, wait, Ray, brilliant. You're just showing the stuff we're talking about. Here's how we're monitoring it. Here's how we're seeing the performance of it.
Mhm.
Here's how we're testing and experimenting before it goes real world, right?
Mhm.
Kind of cool. But that's the thought process we need with agents is it's not a write a requirements doc and hand it over to a developer to do.
Right, right. Yeah, all these processes are things that kind of a normal company would want to do with all of these different, sort of parts to it. So, but I'm just excited that it's more of a, as like when I see some of the benchmarks and it's testing, like there's a test called HLE, Humanities Last Exam, and it's supposed to be questions that if the smartest person in the world will be able to get like 5% on that test, and there are questions that are so difficult that you would never, like as a normal human being, you would never sort of run into that question, right? So to me, I prefer. I think we need to do more of vending bench type testing to see how some of these things could be leveraged, for tasks that can generate some positive results. So,
Hmm.
what about what have you seen when it comes to implementing these systems? What are some of the key challenges that perhaps people are running into when they try to use agentic AI, especially for industries that are regulated?
Well, it's choosing the right step or task for the agent to perform. So I see fear as one of the biggest
Mm,
issues. So regulated industry folks, we're regulated, we're not allowed to use AI. Oh, we can't do that. We're regulated.
mm,
But yet I am also seeing other organizations in those same regulated industries use AI agents.
mm,
So the first thing is kind of breaking down our own mentality on it and fear about it. How do regulated industries use it? Well, first, there's a lot of advancements in progress and that have recently been released to help with that. So it's making sure we're not thinking, oh, it can't be done. It's constantly learning and seeing what's out there and being done. Um, but also analyzing the business process to say, okay, what business process steps can we do that are not putting us at risk during a compliance and regulation? So analyzing the process, if a process is 26 steps long, maybe 3 of those steps could be done with an AI agent without a risk to compliance and regulatory issues. So really a lot of analysis can be done to help us understand where we can adopt this stuff or where we can start experimenting and start learning so that when those advancements that we're afraid aren't going to come actually do come, we're able to move fast. That's kind of how I'm looking at it. Um, how about you? So Ray, are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, one of the things that I liked was a post from Ethan Mollick that he made recently where he said, I gave an agent the task of using other agents to test its thoughts about how to do something. And I thought that that was kind of an interesting thing, that potentially somebody that's extremely regulated, as a check and balance, you create an agent and then you use other agents to verify that
Yes.
that's working. And if you look at Grok, like the Grok for heavy, it actually, in order to solve some of the biggest problems, it's running 4 agents in parallel to
Mhm.
solve the problem. And then they have this very strange voting algorithm where they go, okay, let's compare
Oh,
notes. Let's
yeah.
see which one of us made the best answer to this question. So I
Yeah.
think there's a lot that perhaps potentially people that are heavily regulated, or people that really have this very high standards for how they do their work, that I think could be done with multiple agents. And
100%. 100%.
yeah.
I think I'm seeing the same thing, and I'm hearing that's a best practice as well, is creating a quality assurance agent, right? But
Mhm,
like, it might not be as simple as one QA agent.
mhm,
To your point, when I'm listening to that, I'm thinking, okay, there could be an agent that runs against the result for this one compliance thing and judges the one thing, right? Because we've seen that AI gets a little confused when you give it too many instructions, or check for these 10 things. It might check one and kind of falls out on another, right? We've seen that happen. So, like an agent, 10 different agents that check on the 10 different rules you're trying to get at and get an individual result from each, and then another agent that summarizes that for you, right?
mhm.
So it's the success is all about, can we chunk down and decompose and chunk out each little task and decision? To me, that is the absolute key skill set needed.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that all these patterns have been out there for a long time. So this
Yeah.
sort of concept of having something check something else is something that we've had in image generation. They call that process general adversarial network. So you have an agent that makes something, and then another agent that goes, is that thing working well? Is it what
Yeah.
we thought it was going to be? So I think if we just kind of look at the history of the solutions to some of these things, we're going to find a lot of patterns that I think will work really well. So here's Ethan's post. Is there anything that you've seen where maybe some of this adoption has gone too far, or any kind of maybe interesting, I don't know, errors, or stories about AI going rogue or something?
I mean, we hear stuff in the news. I mean, nothing that I've seen personally necessarily. I feel in general, no, most of the people just aren't using it enough.
Hmm.
Right? I
Yeah.
mean, if I wish I heard so many more people were experimenting like you and I are. I mean, what was it? You and I earlier this week when we were just like, oh yeah, are we doing this week? Yeah, let's do it. And we're both like experimenting, building agents at the same time. Like, I wish more people were doing that to learn more and versus fear. That's really what I wish, because it incorrect usage of this stuff is all about not understanding it and thinking
Hmm.
it can do more than it can do, and not complementing
Hmm.
our own humanness into the mix. It's
Yeah,
We have to
totally.
understand it at the level. We're not going, oh, that's going to do this for me, but now it's going to do it with me in a totally different way.
I think we're definitely still at the experimentation phase.
Yeah.
So maybe some of the problems would be people taking things too far and trying to implement too much without going through a thorough testing process. I know we saw this story recently where this vibe coding rep service deleted the whole user's database because there was no sort of yeah, fake data, told fibs galore. Like, this is definitely an example of this implementation going too far. When you give these tools, when the tools still hallucinate, they keep making mistakes. If you're doing something, make sure that it's not something today that is mission critical, and that you're really experimenting. And I think this is, definitely a task for business analysis, where you want to you want to make sure that you build some processes that prevent from from things. So this is a good example. This is because it started lying, and the systems can do that nowadays. So I mean, implement, but definitely, make sure that you have strategies for me, this could have been as simple as making sure that in programming, we have this thing called Git, where every time you do something, you store the previous state of
Mhm.
the program. But one thing that it doesn't sometimes store is the database part. So there should have been a process that the database gets backed up so that you could just roll back to like something that was working. So
Right.
anyways, thank you very much, Angela. So glad to have you. I love our conversations again because I think we have such a complementary way of talking about things. So I appreciate you spending the time with us today. Anything
Yeah.
else that you're working on before we go?
I'm just working on more LinkedIn learning courses and just all the stuff I do. So follow
Yeah,
me on LinkedIn and yeah.
totally go look for Angela's courses. They are fantastic. Follow her on LinkedIn and take a look at all the goodness that she has on the LinkedIn Learning site. She's quite active there 3 months ago, so that tells me there might be something coming up. I don't know. So take a look. A lot of your courses are super evergreen, so there's great stuff in there.
Mhm. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Ray.
All right, and we'll take care. We'll see you soon.
Thanks. Bye.